Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here, and today we're going to be checking out Star Gagnant. I'm not sure if that's how you're supposed to be saying it, but whatever. So, this is my second day with the game. I first checked it out yesterday, played a bunch, and made it all the way to the second last stage before going to sleep. And then I figured, yeah, it's probably going to be like a matter of like the next handful of sit downs. It's just going to be cleared on the normal difficulty. I wasn't planning on checking this out, but Terarin actually reached out on Twitter and just yeah, provided a key for the Switch version. And so here's the thing. I'll get into a little bit of stuff, and then we'll focus on the actual run and a few things I enjoy, a few things that I'm not so into, and that kind of stuff. But it was sometime last year, I think, Game Type DX, that was like the last review that I did for like a dev who provided a code. I have never really done many of those, to be honest. But after that, I was like, you know what, unless it's a game of my choosing, like one that I am already super passionate about, that I'm just stoked to share, I don't want to actually do reviews because I'm not actually that interested in doing that sort of thing. And so so since then I have just had this rule essentially where it's like, no matter who reaches out, if they're looking for a review in exchange for a Switch code, I just decline every single one because I just want to be fair to everyone all across the board. I don't want to make exceptions. But the thing is, with Terarin, they didn't have any sort of condition. They literally just like reached out and they were just like, oh, hey, feel free to check this out. And there was nothing about doing a review or anything like that. And so I figured, oh, wow, that's really cool. It's really awesome to receive it under those circumstances, because most people will expect something. So I figure, you know what, I'm going to play it. I'm going to do like a 1cc on the normal difficulty at least, and just see how things go. So anyway, so huge thanks there for that. I've been really enjoying the game. There are some, like I said, some, I won't call them issues, but there are certainly things that will push certain players away, and in ways it kind of limits the selling potential, because it's not as accessible for certain people. But yeah, we'll get into that kind of stuff after the fact. And as a lot of you have probably noticed, the game does have a pretty steep price tag for a digital game compared to like most anyway. Now, I'm not sure if it's still on sale or not, but it was on sale for like $30 Canadian when I last checked. But normally it's sitting around $50 or something like that. So I think in ways like some people are going to feel a little more on the leery side. And that's understandable because, like, yeah, everyone has a different situation with finances and whatnot. So it's a great opportunity for me to just share a little bit of my thoughts and that kind of stuff, because that may just provide just a little more insight or information, whatever, just in case you are considering this game. So right off the bat, there are 3 weapon levels. I'm already maxed out, so that's like the 4 directional and then the 2 straight firing streams of bullets in front of me. The 2 blue things that were just circling me are the shields, which you only get like 1 shield at a time, and then it can take 1 hit, and then you gotta like wait until sometime in the stage. Usually like shortly after the stage starts, you'll get a shield drop somewhere from like an enemy, and then usually partway through, like before the boss fight, like the stage end boss, you'll get another one. So you can kind of like budget resources and count on that kind of stuff. I won't really touch on scoring too much, but like there are chains and whatever. The game is like very symmetrical, so if you see a wave of enemies coming out on one side, guaranteed you're going to see the exact same wave coming out on the other side, and that kind of stuff. As like it's just, yeah, you can plainly see that here, like every step of the way. So in that sense, it's not like it's heavy on memorization. There are a few things that you will want to remember, just because it is more or less like a faster paced, frantic at times. Like there's some stages with like asteroids or ice chunks just flying down the screen, and it's like it can be chaotic or feel chaotic. But for the most part, like once you kind of know what to do, you're good to go. So yeah, like I said earlier, making it to the second last stage on my first night with the game, just playing a handful of runs just to get a feel for things. That kind of just gives you an idea as to how far you can push into it without too much issue, whereas like plenty of games will stump you on, let's say, stage 3 until you really crack what needs to be cracked to progress. That's not the case here. Like you can pretty much just blast your way through. So in terms of the rapid fire, the way this works is you have one button for the movement speed, which the whole time I just keep it on the lowest, and even I find even that is pretty fast. Like I enjoy having the ability to move super slow, and that's not present in this game. So I just figured, you know what, I'm just gonna keep it on the lowest speed possible, and that worked out fine for me. But as for the firepower, when you're holding down the fire button, there's one attack button. So when you're holding it down, it's this red shot you see here. And if you tap it instead, then I think it goes something like yellow, green, and blue, depending on how fast you are tapping. Now, I think I'll get into like the thing I'm not so crazy about, and which I know others have already mentioned, like a couple of weeks back or whatever. I came across a few who had commented, some friends of mine who, like I know they aren't planning on playing this because it requires constant tapping. So one thing I will say is, like, normally I absolutely do not mind constantly tapping. Like I did that for all of my gun nail playing, and that was 2 or 3 solid months of just playing the game because I loved it. And I never once had like any soreness or anything like that. But 2 days into this game, and I have experienced sensations in my hand that no other game, like no other shmup, has ever triggered. And I'll get more into that like in a little bit, but I just thought that was very interesting, and in ways I know, like I said, some people have commented, like a buddy of mine mentioned that like 5 minutes into the playing, there was already like soreness. So like some people, that's why I say, like, in some ways it kind of pushes away potential buyers because of that alone. And I'm not sure why they really went with that kind of route in this game, or why they couldn't have added some sort of option or just some different working so that it could be a little more reasonable for people. But for me, that normally not being an issue, and then seeing the effect it has just because of the sheer insanity and like intensity in which you have to apply for like your blue fire, like it's pretty crazy. This run in particular is like it goes well enough, but there are some shield loss moments where I take a hit or I lose my shield, and I was more or less at a point where I was letting myself play sloppily, because with how wildly you need to tap to get like the blue shot, it got to a point where I was like, I don't even care if I'm not doing maximum damage. Like, it's just like I'm done pressing it. Like I don't like when a game feels as though you're being forced to play a certain way. So it's like, yeah, sure, I experimented with it, but it got to the point where it's like, okay, I don't actually care enough about playing well or playing super efficiently. I'm just yeah, whatever. I just rolled with it. By the way, the yellow, those yellow tank things that I grabbed fill my special. So as long as you have yellow energy on that bar up in the top left, you can increase the intensity and like the damage output, like you're seeing me do, like you see me doing now, going from like green to blue and whatever. But yeah, you will see some fumbles here and there. Most of those are just me having done a bunch of runs earlier in the day, and at this point it's just like whatever. I it's just whatever it is. Like I don't care enough to be keeping things super neat and tidy and all that kind of stuff. It was just like, all right, let's just do this. And if I fumble, whatever. Another thing I will say is like the game is actually very generous in terms of the extends. You can always see the next extend up at the right, on the right side. And I think I make it to, I take a couple really silly hits. I think in one of the boss fights, I think the stage end boss fight of this stage, and I'll mention something in particular about that, which is like the thing that I have never experienced in terms of like sensations in my hand when playing a shmup, because I feel that's noteworthy, and it kind of like came as a shock, to be honest. But the game is very generous. Like I went into the final boss with I think 8 lives or something like that. It was a pretty sloppy fight because like I had no idea really what the final boss was going to be doing and all the attacks and the best way to approach it. So I lost a whole bunch of lives in that fight. But for the most part, like I was constantly gaining extends, and I feel the run went well enough for like a first clear on the second day with the game. Considering all the circumstances. And there's some really cool bosses too. Like I don't want to give the idea that like people shouldn't check this game out, because like I enjoyed it enough to certainly clear normal mode. I think if I was going to go for the harder difficulties up, which I don't actually think, like now that I know what to do, I don't think they would actually pose too much more of an issue. But the thing is, I'm not sure I am interested enough, given how the tapping works in this game. And if I still was going to go ahead anyway, then it would probably be a matter of like one run a day, and that would just be very, yeah, like just that much more drawn out probably, compared to like a game where you know you can just practice for hours and just love every moment of it. This is a pretty cool boss. I do really enjoy... Oh, that was such a silly hit. I remember taking that. The visibility is not always, like the projectile visibility is not always super clear compared to some games anyway. Like once you're used to it, sure, it's not a big deal, but at the same time, there are situations where like you'll take a hit and it's just like, oh man, like what? Just because like, yeah, like I said, the nature of the game, fast and furious and whatnot, sometimes the backgrounds are just going crazy and the colors don't always stick out. So I think this is the, we'll know soon enough if this is the one or if it's in like one of the other stages. So I think that was just a genuine fumble. It will be tricky to pick out which death it was, but, and that's assuming there is definitely a second one in this, but there was one instance, if it's not in this fight, it's in somewhere else. There was one, yeah, I think it was maybe the, well, it doesn't matter. There was one of those deaths, there was an instance where out of nowhere, because of all this insane tapping I was doing here to like attempt to get the blue or at least like the green or whatever to take it down quickly, the thing that I have never experienced before was like this sensation where it didn't feel like pain, but something just like ripped through my my hand. Like I just felt this jolt that shocked all the way through, and it locked up my movement. And for like a few seconds, I couldn't even do anything with my hand. And even after beating the game, like there was some like intensity in my hand after, like even just picking up other objects after setting my controller down. And like I said earlier, like I have all sorts of experience and never have had an issue with constantly tapping in games, but in this game it's like it has just triggered something that has never happened before. And I think it is just because they expect you to just go complete bananas for whatever reason, and I honestly don't get that. Like, yeah, there could have been all sorts of other things they decide to do instead. But anyway, this is a pretty interesting stage. The first time I got to this level, I think last night, those like flame balls that pop up and then drop down the screen, those tripped me up a few times for sure. But then after, when you know what to expect, then it's like the easiest thing. And this is a very, very simple boss too. It's like, it's always got the 3 shots, and then the things go down and up again. So sometimes the paws are closer together. In one of the runs earlier, I had situations where I was in the middle, but they were so close together that you got hit anyway. So I just used a slightly different approach and just didn't do things as riskily as before. But the music, for the most part, there are a couple of tracks that I'm not into, but for the most part, the music is really cool, and they do have a different version where you can switch to like the chiptune versions of the songs, and so I think that's a really cool inclusion. The enemies look really awesome. There's a lot going on here. A lot of enemy variety, great colors, some really cool ideas. So like, there are certainly things that I really enjoy, and it was fun enough to just commit to clearing it. But I feel like there are just certain ways in which things would need to be approached if I was going to continue. But I am actually still working on like some other stuff too, so I'm not sure if I'm even going to bother at this point, but we'll see. Those enemies are really cool looking. They remind me of like something that you'd see in Mega Man. Just like hopping robot heads or something like that. Now this is another boss fight that is easy for me to trip up sometimes. Just because like I haven't really paid too much attention. For the most part, like even though you can practice individual stages, I wouldn't do that. I think in some games, like I just don't feel inspired to, like it's just not the kind of shmup that I feel engaged by in a specific way that would have me excited. Like when I was playing Rolling Gunner or Gunnail, like I loved just practicing and just dissecting things. In here, that it didn't inspire me in that way. It was kind of just like, okay, I'm just gonna do runs until I clear it. I don't actually want to practice. I just want to play, and I just want to do it that way instead, and just see how far I get each run. But yeah, it's different. This stage sometimes, not again like only the second day, so it's not like I've been here hundreds of times or anything like that, but I think some of the first few times being to this stage, sometimes I would be losing all sorts of lives because you have those wall sections where you gotta like move over fast enough, and I didn't care enough to like increase my speed, and so sometimes it would be because like you just don't get over fast enough. Yeah, that's just how it goes. But this time, if I'm not mistaken, I do this whole stage without losing a life, and that was nice to see. And I'm kind of just, oh yeah, that was silly. But if I didn't mention it already, I think I was going to earlier, but I might not have. But I do love the risk reward where when you lose that shield, it's like, oh man, if I can just survive. Like you play so much more aggressively. I'm not even sure if risk reward is like the right term, but that's just what came to mind. But just the idea that like things become more risky because you've just taken a hit, you've lost your shield. But like if you're just on it that much more, like you might be able to just make it to that next shield. So yeah, no, it's certainly not risk reward, but whatever. You get the idea. At the time of this recording, Autumn and my daughter were like just behind me watching, and so every time I would beat a boss, my daughter would like clap, and sometimes she would like be cheering and stuff during like intense parts, and so like it was certainly distracting. I think I even had like a death or two here or there throughout the run, because like I'm just hearing like these outbursts and stuff like that, and sometimes that can have an effect. Now there's an attack coming up. Yeah, this one, like, oh, I know that was, I knew that was coming, but it was just one of those things that I didn't even think about during this run. But again, like you're seeing, there isn't actually that much that you have to do in terms of memorization to clear this. You could very easily, like with putting the time in, of course, and like, yeah, cleaning things up, you could probably easily no-miss this game if you were wanting to do that sort of thing. And I don't think it would actually be as challenging to no-miss this compared to plenty of other games. And I think it's simply due to the nature, just the way they have things set up, where it's like, okay, you know where the waves are coming. The waves themselves are actually not very aggressive. Like it's not like there are tons of bullets on the screen or like micro dodging or anything like that. Yeah, it's just what it is. I didn't get low enough in time to take those things out, but normally I would just... Actually, this might have been only my second or third time even getting to this stage, I'm not sure. But yeah, whenever those semicircle pod things show up, it's nice to be super low and just keep the damage going on, both of them simultaneously, so that you can just take them out before stuff bounces too much all over the place. But for the most part, it's a pretty casual level. There really isn't much going on here. The showdown is a little more involved. So yeah, we're sitting on 8 lives right now. That was feeling like pretty great. Man, it's always like hilarious, those moments where like you get a shield or you don't need a shield, and then once the opportunity to get it is gone, or you've collected it when you didn't even need it, that's when you take a hit. Thankfully, I didn't have much of that happen at all. I think that maybe only happened 2 or 3 times or something like that, if that. But But yeah. That's a great pink color. I love that. Nice hot pink. So this is a really cool looking boss. Pretty straightforward. It will do this spread attack. As you have noticed, the green projectiles from enemies can just be shot down. The pink ones you can't, so you do need to dodge those. Oh, when I took that hit, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. That was just me being like too reckless. I think at this point, like I said, some of these runs were just like, okay, whatever. Like I'm playing recklessly because like I just don't. Yeah, I just don't care at this point. And then it does this beam attack. I could have been positioned a little better so that I'm like using the angled shot to still hit it while it's doing that. But I was thinking like, as long as I can just get out of here before taking a hit, then we're good. I would have liked to get like a shield somewhere. Another thing I will say is that depending on when you do lose your shield and lose a life, it can, even though there are like item drops all over the place, it can be, and often, well actually I won't say often, but like it's very easy for runs to just, it's not that you'll lose all your lives, but you'll lose enough where you're just like, oh man, what's the point? Because like you'll lose your shield and then you'll lose a life and then you drop down to like the starting power, which is just your 2 forward firing shots. And then you'll very quickly take another hit. And it's like, okay, there goes another life, because like you lost a life in a frantic moment or when there was chaos and there's still all this stuff happening. So it's like you don't necessarily have the time to recover or whatever. Oh, that was so silly. I think after that I realized, okay, there's always the 2 bursts of that blue. So like stuff like that, just like having very little experience with this boss, it's like, okay, I'm just taking hits all over the place. And I was like, I really just want to like beat this. And of course I could be like, obviously I know what to do now and I know how better to position myself so that I can just keep the damage on much more often. Like for the most part you can pretty much just stay in the middle. And yeah, but yeah, it's easy to like get clipped when you're just flying in for like only the 2nd or 3rd time. I think the first time I made it here, I didn't even last long at all. And like that, I'm taking a lot of hits to the pink, even though the one before this I was doing much better because I was positioned further to the sides. So I think because I was like experimenting more with staying closer to the center, that kind of led to just tripping that up. But I think you could probably still be in the middle and just learn the timing of like tapping out of the way and back. But yeah, anyway, that's the 1cc. But yeah, like obviously room for improvement. I of course skip over this stuff. But yeah, I trust this has been helpful if you've been considering the game, or maybe it's just been entertaining seeing the full run and just hearing the thoughts and my experience and all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate everybody who stops by and listens and just comments and likes and all that kind of stuff. It really does help, and I really appreciate it. And of course everybody who contributes on my Ko-fi page, I really appreciate that as well. You are all super awesome, and I just cannot thank you enough. So anyway, let me know what you think down below. If you're aiming to check this out, or maybe you checked out the demo or whatever the case is. But yeah, thanks again. Have a stellar one, and we will see you next time.